And good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me on this lovely fall-like, I almost said spring, fall-like Friday night. And I hope it's lovely wherever you are and whatever day it is. Before I continue, as always, I'd like to please ask you and implore you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We bring you live shows each and every day and night, including this show. There's a Touchdown Under show with Matty Peverall and Mark Davison. You can catch that on Saturday night. We have post-game stuff on the days of Steeler games, including this Sunday. We have The Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis, yours truly, and Shannon White, the great Shannon White. We have the Scobro show on Tuesdays with Dave Schofield and his brother Rich. We have Know Your Enemy with Jeffrey Benedict and Michael Beck. And then on Thursday, we have the preview with Brian Anthony Davis, senior editor Jeff Hartman, and editor Dave Schofield. Please check those out. And I think I saw the live shows. I think I got them all this time. I think I did. And you can catch those shows on Facebook Live, too. And if you're watching me on Facebook right now, you already know that. You can catch all of our live shows on YouTube and Facebook. So we're everywhere on social media, and you can catch all those shows after the fact. If you can't watch it live, if you're on a date night on Friday night or whatever night we happen to be on doing our live shows, you can catch them after the fact on any audio platform, including Google, Apple, I like iHeartRadio, iTunes. There's whatever one you prefer. You can find our ever growing in popularity podcasting channel. So please check those out. And we also have audio only shows exclusively, of course, for the audio platform. And that includes Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, The Live Mic with Michael Beck, From the Cutting Room Floor with Jeffrey Benedict, The War Room with Matty Peverall. Let's see. We have fantasy football stuff. What Ian's talking about, the Stat Geek with Dave Schofield. They're all in there. You can find us. We have stuff every day. I think we're right up there with everybody else. Maybe the tops now as far as Steelers podcasting platforms. We're so good. Not to brag. I mean, I can brag for them because they're all awesome. I think I'm okay, but they're all awesome, so I can brag. They're not bragging. I am on their behalf. So if anybody has a problem with that, they can come right here to me. But only if you're really small, because I'm getting old. Anyway, please check all those out. And, of course, check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. We bring you news, commentary, film breakdown, anything that pertains to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Anytime there's a breaking story, anytime there's a trade, a cut, injury stuff, we got it for you. As we like to say, it's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. It's the hardest working Steelers site on the web as far as I'm concerned. And if you check it out, the content is endless. It's informative. It's funny. It's serious. Everything you want from your Pittsburgh Steelers, we have it for you. And, of course, I want to welcome everybody to the live chat. And I don't even have to go back and check because I know who was number one tonight, and that's Jared Devil. I saw him as soon as I clicked on. He was there. Jared Devil was number one. But I'm going to say hello to a lot of folks, and that's Brad Jewett, Lumberzack, Michael Armster, who I think is a newbie, so welcome, Michael. Just Me, the very famous Just Me is checking in from YouTube. Welcome, Just Me. Owen David, who calls me Mr. Defio. Well, I am 49, so I guess it's hard to avoid that now. Mark Tobin, George Rice, who's another newcomer. I welcome you, George. Kathy Ford, the legend. George Teston. All right. T-Money, my man Terry. I was hanging out with him on Tuesday. We were talking about sports, of course. Always talking about sports. We're going to the Pitt game in November. I'm looking forward to it. North Carolina against Pitt. Dusk Thunder. What a name that is. That's our name of the night so far. So welcome everybody to the live chat. Welcome everybody to the show. So let's talk about some Steelers. And how about that week 2 game, right? Not so good. It went down as far as about as the way I thought it would go. As far as the actual style and the back and forth, I was of course expecting a close win for the Steelers, and it looked like it might be that way. But I think the Steelers just suffered too many injuries. No kidding. No bleep Sherlock, right? But yeah, they suffered far too many key injuries on defense, including Tyson Alualu, the very valuable, if maybe underrated a little bit, defensive interior lineman. Of course, TJ Watt left that game with a groin injury, and they suffered. They had problems before the game with injuries. Joe Hayden missed. Devin Bush missed. I mean, you throw in Stephon Tuitt, who's been out since before training camp. And it was just too much to overcome for that defense as far as being able to dominate the Raiders offense the way they dominated the Bills offense a week earlier in week 1. You just couldn't, it was too much to ask, and you couldn't expect them to be dominant for 4 quarters. It was like a skeleton crew. It was like a preseason defense at a certain point in the game. You had Justin Lane in there. You had Akilo Witherspoon. I mean, it was just not a good day for injuries. And as we know, the offense just has not been capable of picking the defense up for the longest time. I mean, if you're going back to Halloween of last year, this offense has been pretty putrid. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's been pretty putrid. It's been just the same story week in and week out. You can anticipate lots of 3 and outs, lots of downtime, maybe a couple touchdowns if you're lucky. And you hope that the defense or the special teams can make a splash play and help to pull out a low-scoring, close game. But again, with the injuries on defense, it wasn't meant to be this week. It wasn't going to happen. And the Raiders kind of pulled away in the second half. After TJ Watt left late in the first half with the groin injury, Derek Carr just went. I mean, he was doing pretty good up to that point anyway, but he just went off after that. And he was in a zone, and he never got out of it the rest of the game. Anytime he needed to make a big play, he made it. Every time he needed a big pass, he made it. So kudos to him. Kudos to the Raiders for taking advantage. I'm not so sure if they would have lost even without the injuries, but I think it would have been a different story as far as the score anyway. So I think the key point in that game was obviously the touchdown to Henry Ruggs right after the Steelers cut the lead to within 16-14 early in the fourth quarter. Third was a 3rd and 10, and Carr hit Ruggs on a bomb to basically put the game away. I mean, the Steelers still had a chance, but the way that offense was playing, they really didn't. You can look at that 4th and 1 at the 34. And by the way, when I saw Pat Freiermuth, the rookie tight end, when I saw him get stopped short there, and I knew it was going to be a 4th and 1, I said, "Oh no, they're going to have to make a decision here." And to be quite honest, even though I think the right call would have been to go for it, I wasn't all that confident that they were going to be able to make 1 yard. And I think that tells you all you need to know about their offense right now. So, I mean, people are lambasting Mike Tomlin for that call. A lot of people are anyway. And they're probably right. There was 8.5 minutes left to go at that point. You probably go for it, right? You probably go for it because you only have so many possessions left. And if you go for it there and say you go down and score a touchdown or even kick a field goal, you probably have 5 or 6 minutes left. The defense holds. You get the ball back with a reasonable amount of time. You can try to complete the comeback. But to be honest with you, even if they would have went for it, I don't think they would have made it. I'm just keeping it real. I don't think they would have made it. They certainly wouldn't have made it on the ground. I mean, let's be real. They had 39 yards all day. Najee Harris had 38. So they weren't gonna make it on the ground. As far as any kind of pass play, I'd say a deeper pass probably would have had a better chance of being completed than anything around the line of scrimmage, because we know how defenses have been playing them since the middle of 2020. They crowd the line of scrimmage. They dare you to beat them deep. They dare you to beat them on the sidelines. And if you can't do it, then you're in trouble. So it would have been the right call for Tomlin to go for it, but I don't think they would have executed. That's just how it feels right now with this offense. So it was a disheartening loss, and not because it was a loss. I mean, losing to the Raiders isn't necessarily a sin, because I think they're a lot better than people think they are, and I kind of mentioned that last week during the six pack. It's just the way they lost. Again, to repeat myself, it was the same old story. The offense could really do nothing, and it was basically no offense over most of the first half, and you're expecting the defense to just keep you in it. And when the defense is injury depleted like it was, it's going to spell disaster. So I'm not mad that they lost necessarily. I'm just frustrated at how they lost again, because it was a repeat of everything we saw last year. So those are my thoughts on the Raiders game. As far as the injury front is concerned, Deontay Johnson, who, speaking of second guessing, we second guessed Tomlin on the 4th and 1 decision, and of course everybody's second guessing him now on allowing a play to occur with Roethlisberger passing to Johnson, and with 20 seconds left and they're down by 9 points, no chance of winning at all. And he gets tackled on the last play of the game, and he hurts his knee, and now he's out on Sunday. And Alex Highsmith is out for Sunday's game with a groin injury. By the way, Johnson had a knee injury, unspecified of the severity, but I guess it shouldn't be too bad, because he was up in the air until Friday, so it probably won't keep him out for a prolonged amount of time. But it's going to keep him out against the Bengals. Anyway, Johnson's out, Highsmith is out, and TJ Watt is questionable, and basically it's a game time decision. So stay tuned for that. It looks like he's going to play, but I would not be shocked if he doesn't. If Watt's good to go, provided he's close enough to 100%, I still feel pretty good about the defense with Melvin Ingram filling in for Highsmith. We saw how well he performed the first 2 weeks, especially week 1. I think they'll be okay with a Watt and Ingram combination at outside linebacker, with, I guess, Jameer Jones filling in or figuring into the rotation as the third guy. But if both Watt and Highsmith are out, and you have Ingram and Jones as your top guys on the outside, yikes. So that's your injury news. As far as this week's game, if I may talk about Sunday's game, as the title suggests, because of those injuries and because of the way the offense has been playing, I don't see this as a quote-unquote get-right game for the Steelers. And I got that idea, by the way, while doing the hangover with Brian and Shannon on Monday. Somebody, you might be in the live chat right now, somebody said that, Sunday's going to be a get-right game for the Steelers. But, these aren't your older brothers, Bengals and Steelers anymore. These aren't the teams from 4 or 5 years ago when the Bengals would come in here even last year and the year before without Ben in 2019 when Mason Rudolph blew him out, and last year Ben blew him out. But I don't see it being that way this time. I just think you're going to be missing Johnson. You're going to be missing Highsmith. Alu is out, and you're going to have Cam Hayward in there, surrounded by a lot of youngsters, namely Isaiah Buggs and Loudermilk. They signed Taco Charlton. I guess I'm not sure if he's activated yet. He's on the practice squad. But even if he does play, is he a outside linebacker? Is he a defensive lineman? I'm pretty sure he doesn't know the scheme yet, so I'm not counting on him at all, whether he plays or not. So it's gonna be rough going there. So you have the injury situation for the Steelers. the Bengals, they have their problems too. They have, as far as I heard, T. Higgins, their young, talented receiver, he's likely going to be out for Sunday's game. As is, who am I missing? There's somebody else for the Bengals that's out. Gosh, no, maybe that's it. Maybe he's the only one. So, the Bengals are going to be dealing with some problems too. So I'd say as far as injuries are concerned, it's basically a wash. If you're looking at both teams' offensive lines, it's kind of a wash in the negative, as they both have issues. If you're looking at the skilled position players, I'd say the Steelers overall might have a slight edge because I think Claypool and Juju in Washington are a better trio than Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and whoever the number 3 receiver is for the Bengals. But it's close. It's close. As far as running backs, until proven otherwise, Joe Mixon gets the edge over Najee Harris. He's already rushed for 196 yards over 2 games. So say what you want about the Bengals line, but at least they've been able to establish the run a little bit through 2 weeks, whereas the Steelers haven't at all. So it's not going to be an easy win. I think the Steelers are favored by 3, thanks to the injuries, and it's probably going to be a low scoring game. And when you realize how predictable and consistently inconsistent, if you will, the offense is for the Steelers, it's hard to consider any game to be a sure thing at this point. Any game. I don't care who, maybe even the Lions, if they were playing them right now. There's no such thing as a sure thing for this team. There's nobody that can walk into Heinz Field and you'd feel comfortable with a fairly easy win, or even a win. So when you're relying on the defense to keep it close, when you're relying on maybe some splash plays by the defense, or even the special teams, as we saw in week 1 in Buffalo, it kind of makes it a hard game to predict. So I think it's going to come down to the wire again. I mean, I won't tell you what I predicted in our weekly staff picks. You might not like it, but I think it's gonna be a close game toward the end. I think the offense is going to struggle to get out of the teens once again, and I fear that they might be 1-2 after this week. That's all I'll say. So it just has that feel to me. I realize they're usually much better when they play the back home games. Are much better in the second game, and of course they usually do really well against the Bengals at home. But it just feels like the kind of game that they had last year at the end of the year in Cincinnati in mid-December. It feels like it's going to be that kind of game where there's not going to be much breathing room for the receivers, for the tight ends, for Roethlisberger, because the Bengals have a pretty decent pass rush. They have six sacks through 2 games. Let's see, I wrote them down here. Sam Hubbard's pretty good veteran. Ogunjobi's pretty good from Cleveland. Of course, they have Von Bell and Jesse Bates. They're maybe the best pair of safeties in the division right now as far as 1-2. And, of course, they have Mike Hilton as the slot. And we all know he's pretty darn good. They were we were lamenting his departure 6 months ago, so we can't suddenly try to say that Mike Hilton is a liability. He's a pretty darn good player. So their defense, it has its issues, but it's also pretty darn good. So certainly it seems a formidable enough unit to take on the Steelers and their inept offense. So again, I'm looking for a close game. Clearly the Steelers, if they're going to win this game, they're going to need to make life miserable for Joe Burrow, and that starts with the pass rush, and that's going to be contingent upon T.J. Watt playing. If T.J. Watt doesn't play, all bets are off. But as I said earlier in the show, if both Watt and Highsmith are playing, and you get Bush back there, and of course Joe Schobert will be there, and he certainly has a lot to make up for after last week's game. Then I like the defense's chances of keeping it close. You have Joe Hayden back. I'm happy about that. He's going to restore a bit of order to that secondary. He's going to put Cam Sutton back as your starting outside corner. And then when you switch to sub packages, which is usually a lot of the time, James Pierre will come in and help them move inside. But at least Pierre won't be playing 100% of the snaps like he had to do last week when Hayden missed. So, it's nice to see all these guys back. If TJ Watt comes back and he plays this game, then I'll feel a lot better. So those are my thoughts on Sunday. And at the 20:45 mark, I will bid adieu to the first half of the show. I will say goodbye to the first half. But if you're watching me live on YouTube or Facebook, as I always say, please don't go anywhere because I'm not. I'll be back. If you're listening on an audio platform, this has been part 1, and I thank you for that. And please come back and download part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six-Pack. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six-Pack. I'm your host, Tony Defio. If you downloaded part 1, I thank you for that. If you came back and downloaded part 2, I thank you for that. And if you're watching me live and if you stuck with me, I thank you for that as well. We have Michael O'Malley joins us late, Steelers Pittsburgh. If I didn't get you already, Brad Jewett. And Devin Logan, who joins us from Facebook, he says, I'm going to throw my TV out the window. Man, this game isn't like end all be all, like meaning it's not make or break. Of course, it's week 3. It's not make or break. But a win would be nice. Yeah. I mean, believe me, trust me. I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm a gloom and doomer, naysayer. Ha ha ha. I hope they lose. Believe me, I want them to win. I want them to win 38-3. I want somebody to send me a nasty email after the game or make a nasty comment on YouTube on the Hangover on Monday, tell me what an idiot I am for saying that they might lose to the Bungals at Heinz Field in week 3. Believe me, I want that to happen. It's just the feeling I get based on what I've seen through 2 games. I kind of and based on the injury issues, it doesn't feel like it's going to be a great day on Sunday. Even if they win, it might be like one of those 17-14, 16-14 kind of wins where you're like, they escaped with the victory, but I'm not feeling too good about their chances moving forward until they figure this offense out. And will they ever figure it out? That's that's the kind of win. If they do win, that's the kind of win I anticipate them having one of those. They won, but so what? All hope is lost. You know what I mean? Speaking of which, and that leads me into my next topic, and that's the eye test. And I wrote an article that was published on Thursday about the Steelers lagging behind both the Ravens and the Browns in the AFC North in terms of just overall performance and how all 3 teams have looked through 3 weeks. And people gave me trouble, crap for that, which I anticipated, right? And the general refrain was they're all 1-1, meaning all 4 teams, even the Bengals, are 1-1 so far through 2 weeks, and that's the bottom line. But I wasn't going for the bottom line like Stone Cold. I was going for nuance. And if you watch these 3 teams, I think, in my personal opinion, the Ravens and the Browns right now look like stronger teams than do the Steelers. And that's mainly due to the offense. In the offenses of the 2 AFC North foes. Of course, the Ravens, we know what their strength is, and that's running the football. And yes, they've had some injury issues with running backs, but they still managed to to be really strong on the ground through 2 games. And yes, that's because of Lamar Jackson and his presence and his ability to tuck and run and make things miserable and for opposing defenses. But I mean, who cares if that's the reason why they're able to run the ball? The bottom line is they're able to run the ball, and that's their identity. Lamar Jackson is their identity. He's been what's been causing all this, to quote Ric Flair, for the past 3+ years, as far as they're concerned. He's the reason that their offense has been so potent. And it looks like it's going to be the same deal again in 2021, with or without J.K. Dobbins and these other running backs that have been hurt. Lamar Jackson's going to keep their offense functioning pretty much close to how it has since he's been their starting quarterback. And they scored 36 points last week, and a lot of people say, well, they got lucky. They got lucky because Patrick Mahomes fumbled at the end. Otherwise, they may have lost. And that's true. But again, it's not about the results so much. It's just about the eye test and how strong they look as a team. And the Ravens have played 2 close games, and they're 1-1. Same as the Steelers, but the Ravens just look more capable. And even the Browns, to me, look like the best team in the division right now after 2 weeks. They gave the Chiefs all they could handle in the first week at Arrowhead Stadium, if not for a Nick Chubb fumble, if not for the punter fumbling a snap. They probably win that game. And so you can't count on those kind of things happening week in and week out in order for the Browns to lose. They're not going to keep losing that way. And their offense just looks far more complete than does the Steelers. Baker Mayfield, he might not be a MVP candidate anytime soon, but he looks like a pretty darn capable quarterback with a lot of talent, a lot of ability. He has decent receivers. He has a couple of great tight ends. Well, I shouldn't say great, a couple of really good tight ends, and the best running back tandem in the NFL, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And, oh, by the way, that offensive line is exceptional. So the offense looks like it might have the ability to be the best in the NFL before the year is out. So, the Browns and the Ravens, they both look like they are capable of doing some things. Like how they say in golf, that'll play. Well, the Ravens and the Browns, they both look like they have offenses that will play for the remainder of the 2021 season. And when you compare them to what the Steelers have right now, it looks like night and day. And it might be like comparing apples to oranges, but it kind of reminds me, the Steelers on offense right now, they kind of remind me of the Steelers on defense right after that last Super Bowl appearance, Super Bowl 45 in 2010. They were still stout. They were still good against the run. They still were capable of finishing number 1. I think they did both in 2011 and 2012. But they just did not have that explosiveness. They weren't able to get after the quarterback. They averaged like 35 sacks a year. They weren't able to take the football away anywhere. They weren't opportunistic on defense. In 2011, they finished with 15 takeaways, even though they won 12 games. It was really, really crazy. And for the next 5-6 years, they averaged 19 takeaways a year, which is just not going to get it done. And of course, they continued to average 35 sacks a year. And if you remember the defenses of the day, the prominent defenses, I should say, the Seahawks defense, the 49ers, of course, the Ravens, the Broncos, they all look like they were far more explosive, far more opportunistic, right? And of course, they were some of the strongest contenders of that era, whereas the Steelers really weren't. So, people would argue with me back then, well, how can you say this defense isn't capable? They finished number 1 in yardage. They finished number 1 against the run. Yeah, but they also looked a step or 2 slow. And if you remember, this is when guys like James Ferrier, Casey Hampton, They all started to retire or get released. After that 2010 season, those guys just did not look the same anymore. James Ferry didn't look the same. Casey Hampton, of course, didn't look the same anymore. Even Troy and Ike Taylor, those guys, they kind of regressed. They got old. It happens in sports. And unfortunately, it sometimes happens all at once. And the reason why I say it, I know it's not apples to orange, or it's not apples to apples, and it's more apples to oranges, because the Steelers' offense right now is not an old offense. They have an older quarterback in Ben, and they have a bunch of young skill position players and a young offensive line. So it's not exactly the same thing, but it's kind of the same thing, because you don't know what you have with this offense right now, and you don't know if it's ever going to be good, right? That's the thing about players or units or teams that are on the rise or on the decline. You just don't know what you don't know if they are on the rise until they prove it, and you don't really know they're on the decline when they're on the decline, if that made any sense. They kind of look the same. Like a team that's on the decline or a player that's on the decline, they kind of look like they did when they were on the ascent, right? There are a lot of hiccups, a lot of uncertainty. And again, you don't really know until you know. So with this offensive line especially, it's completely different with the exception of Shooks Okorafor from what they had last year. So you don't really know at this point what you have with this line, and you're not going to know until they prove that they're capable. And they might never prove that they're capable. That's just the reality of it, because they're new. So it is apples to oranges when you're talking about an old defense from a decade ago compared to a young offense, mostly young offense now. But still, they don't look anywhere near as good as these other offenses I just talked about. Like, you name any good offense around the league right now, they don't look to be in the same universe. So, I realized what I said a couple weeks ago, even last week after the Bills game, about how this team the defense is too good for this team to fall off the table in 2021. And I still believe that. Provided they're healthy, I still believe the Steelers their defense is too good for them to be like a 4 or 5 win team this year. I just don't see it, because defense makes up for a lot. However, after 2 weeks, I'm kind of leaning toward. I said, what did I say off season? By the way, this is like a team that can finish anywhere between 7-10 and 11-6. And right now, based on how this offense is played through 2 weeks, which looks a lot like it performed last year over the second half, this looks closer to an 8 or 9 win team. So I think they're still they're right in that range that I thought they would be. But, I was hoping the offense would perform a little bit better after 2 weeks, so I could say that this is a 10 or 11 win team. They might get there. They might start to improve. But right now, this looks like a team that might be an 8 or 9 win team, because we saw it 2 years ago, right? We saw how good a truly dominant defense was when it was paired with a truly awful offense. And that's what we have right now. We have a great defense that's being paired with an awful offense. And when you get out of that, you get around 500, right? So it's funny, like people talk about the Browns and the Ravens and how their defense isn't as good as the Steelers. So they think that makes things even. But, if you remember, think back to like the mid-2010s, right? When the Steelers had this juggernaut of an offense and they had kind of a mediocre defense. And then the Ravens, between like 2013 and 2017, they had a hard time making the playoffs, but they had a great defense. As always, they had a pretty darn good defense. They always had great special teams. They just had a really average to below average offense. But because their defense and special teams were so good, they were always able to kind of stay in it and win 7, 8, 9 games and be in the playoff race until the final week of the season. But did you ever think of them as a true contender for the Lombardi after that 2012 run when Joe Flacco went out of his mind in the postseason and won them a Super Bowl and won himself a lot of money? Did you ever really truly consider them a contender over that half-decade stretch until Lamar Jackson took over halfway through the 2018 season. I don't think anybody did. But the Steelers, with their mediocre defense, with Ross Cockrell and those guys playing in the secondary, with Brandon, what's his name? I forget his name. Anyway, those guys playing in the secondary, Bryce McCain, William Gay, I can go on. With that all-pro offense of theirs, with the killer bees and that offensive line, they were considered to be true Super Bowl contenders. They just needed their defense to be kind of mediocre. All right. Whereas right now, when you're looking at the Steelers offense, it doesn't look mediocre. It looks pretty darn awful. So it just doesn't seem like, even though their defense has the potential to be dominant again, it doesn't seem like they can really be true contenders. But it's early. It's early. And when I wrote that article the other day, I was just going by my feelings after 2 weeks. You know, when you're doing this kind of thing, whether it's podcasting or writing, you can't just like maintain your opinion week in and week out and maintain your stance week in and week out. You have to react to what you see each and every week. So that's what I was going by when I wrote that article. It's not that I'm being inconsistent and being a hypocrite or whatever you want to call it. It's just that I'm collecting data each and every week. I'm collecting feelings and thoughts each and every week. And I'm collecting results each and every week, and I'm weighing my opinion based on that. So as of right now, it looks like the Ravens and the Browns are better teams than the Steelers. But if that offense can ever even become slightly above average, it might be a different story. But that's a big if at the moment. But I'm still holding out hope. So with all that being said, I think it's time to open things up to some questions and comments to round out the show, as is my custom every Friday night. And let's see. Brad Jewett says, care to guess what his injury is? I'm not sure who you're talking about. So I know Deontay Johnson had a knee injury. Highsmith had a groin injury. Of course, Watts dealing with a groin injury. Alu unfortunately broke his ankle. Oh, and Steeler Chick 46, who, by the way, welcome to the show. She answered Brad's question, so I spoke too soon. And Christopher 11, who also is new to the show, he says the Steelers will win Sunday. I guarantee it. And he's quoting Joe Namath. And I hope we're in a position at the end of the year where some Steeler is making all the fans and the media angry for guaranteeing a Super Bowl win. Super Bowl victory. Wouldn't that be something? And I nominate you, Juju, because that would really be the perfect combination of a player and who has the ability to draw the ire of the fans. All right. Christopher 11 again says, I believe Coach Mike Tomlin understands that you have to work out all the kinks in September, then go on a run. Well, there's no question. There's no question. They're still finding themselves through 3 weeks. It's not that, as I said, the team that you see in week one is going to be vastly different than the team you're going to see in October and November and in December. So that is where the uncertainty comes in, and that's where you have to wonder if these guys are ever going to get it together as far as an offense. Like the defense, when healthy, the defense is. I think it's the track record's there. We know what this defense is going to be, but this offense, you just don't know because it's been the same thing week in and week out. And you have to almost rely on a perfect day for this team to win. If you're going to play it that way, if you're going to play a 17-14 kind of game every week, well, then you're going to need a bounce or two to go your way. And it's not always guaranteed, right? It's not always guaranteed. You know, when you're capable of doing a lot on offense, well, that can make up for a lot of stuff too. Just like a great defense can make up for a lot of stuff. A great offense can make up for a lot of stuff. So Just Me says, like I said, Ben will try and go in and play through another injury. He'll take a hit and realize he's injured and In comes Mason. Well, you know what I think is going to happen? I think Ben's going to tough it out for 4 quarters because that's what Ben does. That's been his modus operandi. Is that the right way to say it? His entire career. Remember that one game? Oh God, it was about 10 years ago. He had a fractured foot, and he came in and threw 5 touchdowns against the Titans. I think it was the Titans. Remember that he was carted off the field against the Bengals at the end of that wild card game 5 years ago, and he came back in and kind of orchestrated with the help of Vontaze Burfict that game-winning field goal drive. And then the next week he played lights out with a supposedly a separated shoulder against the Broncos. They lost, but he played really well. So I anticipate Ben at least playing 4 quarters on Sunday. And who knows, maybe he'll go out there and throw 5 touchdown passes. Wouldn't that be something? Lifelong fan says the Steelers have only played 2 games against 2 good teams. Yes, they have. But some of the things you've seen through 2 weeks are what you were seeing last year against not so good teams like the Bengals. The Bengals kind of kicked the snot out of them in the third to last game of the year. You know, the Colts, who didn't make the playoffs, but they weren't a juggernaut. They came in here and had a 17-point lead, and Pittsburgh had to come back late to win. The Washington football team, who made the playoffs, but as a sub 500 or a 500 division winner, they weren't that great. They came in here and won. So, you know, it's not about who the competition is right now, or even dating back to last year. It's about how the Steelers have basically looked the same week in and week out, and they're making every defense look like the '85 Bears. You know, with the scheme and the strategy these opposing defenses are able to use against this very predictable offense, they all look dominant. That's the thing. They all employ they all crowd the line of scrimmage. They take the middle of the field away. They force Roethlisberger to throw it deep and try to hit passes down the sideline. And, you know, if he's not doing that, he's throwing little 2-yard passes or passes behind the line of scrimmage. It's the same formula each and every week. And Pittsburgh has not been able to solve that yet. So it's not about the level of competition that I'm worried about right now. It's about their identity and how they don't really have one on offense other than bad. That's their identity, bad on offense. Hopefully that changes. And Rajan says that Mason Rudolph, he will not survive behind this line of scrimmage. Well, he's probably a little bit more mobile than Ben at this point, which, you know, is, I don't know if that's saying a lot or not, but yeah. Mark Tobin says, I think Mason can beat the Bengals if called upon. Honestly, not that the stage is not too big. Oh, yeah, I'm not worried about that, but I don't think it's going to come to that. I think Roethlisberger is going to play the whole game. All right. A lot of Mason Rudolph talk all of a sudden, but I don't think it's good. But even though Ben's been cleared to play, so I don't know where all the Mason Rudolph talk is coming from, but I think Ben's going to play on Sunday and play the full game. And George Rice says, looking at our schedule, the Steelers' schedule, where's the next 7 wins? It's a rhetorical question. I don't see it. I've been watching them since the early 70s. Longtime fan. They look like one of the bad ones. Yikes. That's my fear too. I've been hopeful. I was really excited after that Buffalo win. I mean, I was super. You saw me last week. You saw me on The Hangover. I was giddy. But it's like an accumulative thing. When you see the offense continue to do the same thing, it kind of makes you realize, like, geez, you know, every week's going to be like it was in 2019 now, and at the end of last year. And they're going to have to pull out all these low-scoring games, and it's really hard to do in the modern era of professional football. I mean, you can get away with that in the 1970s, the 13-10 wins and the 16-10 wins and 10-7 wins week in and week out. Even in the 90s, you can win some games like that on a regular basis. But nowadays, it's really hard to ask a defense, even a great defense like the Steelers have, provided they're all healthy. it's hard to ask them to go out every few minutes after your offense keeps going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. It's hard to ask them to continue to go out there and be dominant. Even Troy Polamalu said one time, even the best defenses can be exposed if they're on the field too long or too often. The offense and the defense often work hand in hand. And if a defense is on the field for 35, 40 minutes and the offense continues to see its tendencies and how it lines up in certain situations, it makes it easier to beat. It makes it easier to diagnose. And what we've seen through 2 weeks is the offense doing virtually nothing in the first half, right? 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, turnover, whatever. And, the defense can only withstand that kind of ineptitude for so long before it breaks down. Even a healthy defense is going to break down eventually. Again, especially today when everything's catered to the offense. So, again, the key to Sunday's victory or Sunday's game is you have to get after Joe Burrow, and you have to do what you do to him what you did to Josh Allen in Week 1, and that's dominate the line of scrimmage and make his life uncomfortable and get in his face and be at his feet and all those things that quarterbacks hate. And that's going to be a lot easier to do if TJ Watt's in there. If TJ Watt's not in there, then it might be another one of those things where, yikes, this young quarterback looks pretty darn good. So let's hope it doesn't come to that. Oh, wow. I missed the super chat. And this is from Monster 19, and he donates $4.99. We thank you for that. Sorry, I missed it. And he says, let's be optimistic. The team needs work, yes, but we're always in it at the end of the season. Here we go. There you go. That's an optimistic fan. And we all hope you're right. But thank you for the $4.99. That was very generous. Justin Gall says, and he's joining us from YouTube, he says, defenses are going to stack the box until the Steelers can throw the ball middle of the field and hit deep post, digs, and outs. Then we need the line to hold their blocks to give Najee a chance to find holes. It's very astute. And actually, the receivers have been called into question. Their route running the last couple weeks, at least the last week anyway, and how they all seem to be running the same routes week in and week out. I remember talking to somebody on like in the early days of The Hangover with Brian, or I forget what it was called back then, but when we did it on the phone. And the one guy who called in from New Jersey all the time, and he always said, look, the Steelers don't really run creative routes. Where's their route tree? Why aren't they utilizing the traditional route tree? And a lot of people have said that this week about them. And they're certainly not utilizing the middle of the field. That's definitely a thing. Everything seems to be on the periphery as far as passes. They're more horizontal than they are vertical. And even when I do go vertical, it's right down. It's down the sideline. And nothing, no post, nothing in the middle of the field. People were giving Chase Claypool a hard time for not coming down with these 50-50 balls last week, and rightfully so, maybe. But these receivers, not every pass has to be a 50-50 ball. Where's the separation? Where's that, those catches where the opposing fan base is going, why is he always wide open? Every time he's always wide open. There's nobody around him. You never see Steelers receivers catching passes that way. There's always like 5 guys around him, it would seem. So, yeah, there really has to be some way that this offense can be more creative and unpredictable, which was why Matt Canada was brought in here in the first place. But, again, until they figure out that line, it might be a lot to ask. So, excuse me. All right. And Ryan O'Toole checks in, and he says of Jeffrey Benedict, he did a great film breakdown the other day. He says, Jeffrey did a great article on how the offensive line looks close to being competent. Well, there's some hope. They were just missing assignments, and they were this close to. I read that article the other day, or this morning, Friday morning, and he's right. And that's the problem with youth. It's kind of like when you have veterans that are on the decline. It's the same kind of mistakes. You're missing assignments. You're a step too slow. And that's how the offensive line looks right now. The only question is, does it have it in it to take it to the next step? We hope it does. So hope for continued growth and continued improvement with this offense and continued dominance with the defense. And, of course, health with the defense. There it is, Monster. I'm going to highlight it. There you go. That's the super chat he sent over, and I missed 5 minutes ago. And he says, let's be optimistic. The team needs work. Yes, but we're always in it until the end of the season. Here we go. Well, I think they have that kind of defense too. It's just the problem is it might just be that defense just might be good enough to keep them in it and nothing else and nothing more. And Lumberzack asks, Tony, do you think they let Shooks ride the pines when Banner comes back? At this point, yes. And the way Max Crosby kind of handled him on that one play last week, I don't think he shoved him on his back and he shoved him into Ben's feet. I don't think he's capable of being a starter right now. I think Banner will get the chance. But the thing about Zach Banner that's kind of concerning is he's only played one game or started one game, and it wasn't even a full game because that was the game he got hurt week 1 of 2020. So we don't really know about him. And like I said before, we do know that competition for the right tackle spot was supposedly pretty darn close in 2020 before they broke camp. So I don't know what that says about Zach Banner, but I do think he's going to get the chance to start, and Shooks will be the swing tackle once Banner is healthy enough to play. If for no other reason, then he's apparently better at run blocking than Okorafor is, and he has that demeanor that matches or is closer to matching Kendrick Green and Dotson and Dan Moore and even Adrian Clem, the coach. So I think Banner will get the nod, at least initially, once he comes back. And on that note, at the 9:53 mark, I will say goodbye to you all. It was a fun, productive show. We even got a super chat in there, which I'm thankful for. It was fun talking to you guys. It was fun venting and explaining myself over my articles and my feelings and how I'm not just going to have the same opinion week in and week out. It's going to change, and it's going to be based on what I see and what the Steelers are doing. If I had the same opinion each and every week, it would be boring, wouldn't it? I wouldn't have to write any articles or even do any podcasts. So hopefully my opinion next week is, wow, these Steelers are going to the Super Bowl. I can feel it. We'll see. But on that note, have a great weekend and enjoy the game. Hopefully it's a win and a 2-1 start. And I'll talk to you on Monday on The Hangover with Brian and Shannon White. Until I talk to you again, go Steelers. Have a great weekend, everybody.